It's another edition of Time About the Movies, and today we're taking a look at the films of May 29th, 1998. We got 6 movies to look at today, so let's not waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and jump on into it. And we'll start off with the biggest new release of the weekend, and that is Sandra Bullock, Harry Connick Jr., and Jenna Rollins in Hope Floats. God, I hate this movie so much. You could pretty much tell that I really do not like this movie. And really, you could pretty much see why. So basically, the story is that you have Sandra Bullock playing this unassuming housewife whose life is disrupted when her husband, played by Michael Pare, reveals her infidelity to her on a Ricky Lake talk show. I mean, they call her somebody else in this movie, but in the 1990s, you knew who Ricky Lake was. You knew what she looked like back then. They even show her in the trailer here. It's just like, that's Ricky Lake, and like, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. It's just like, so so her and her daughter, played by Mae Whitman, who's actually been in a couple of movies by Fox in the late 90s. She was in Independence Day and One Fine Day, slowly but surely building her acting career at this point. She goes to live with her mother, played by Jenna Rollins, in the small town where she grew up, where everyone knows of her televised marital collapse, and she meets an old friend named Justin, played by Harry Connick Jr., and instantly sparks a romance. But while his intentions are clear and good, she struggles with the decision to unequivocally accept him in his life, which basically means that they're gonna get together at the end of the movie. She's gonna let him in, and there's gonna be a third act breakup, and they have to realize that they love each other very much, and they get together at the end. It's a happy ending, and blah 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 blah. You've seen this garbage over and over again, and quite frankly, I got sick and tired of it very quickly, as most people did. You know, I know Sandra Bullock is a great actress. We know Sandra Bullock is a great actress, but there was a time when she was just doing these terrible movies to just try to get an Oscar for something that is way below what the talents that she really has here. Like, even when she won the Oscar for The Blind Side, like, she didn't win the Oscar for a great performance in The Blind Side. She won it for a career as an actress. Like, it's like the same thing with Colin Firth. Colin Firth didn't win for The King's Speech. He won it because he's Colin Firth. He's a great actor. Give him an Academy Award. I mean, this is something that we've seen done over and over again. And at times, yeah, sometimes that can work, but that's been the biggest problem with the Academy Awards, and that's a whole other subject altogether that we can delve into, but on another point in time. But honestly, when I looked at the movies that she did where she was actually acting in this, trying to be in a serious role, there's nothing really grand that comes to mind. Maybe Crash, honestly, but even then, Crash. I think is I don't hate Crash as most people do. I like the movie Crash, but did I think it deserved to win Best Picture over something like Brokeback Mountain? I don't think so. I think that was just a mistake on their part because they were too afraid of what would happen if Brokeback Mountain won, I guess. But again, whole other thing altogether. But the reason why I don't like this movie is because it's every single melodramatic cliche by the book, and it's not clever, it's not smart, it's not enjoyable. These actors are putting way too much effort in a story that should be more interesting, maybe, if the story didn't just go to by the book. It's like, nobody's given a bad performance in this movie. The performances in here are perfectly fine, but they're just devoid of anything that's making this movie memorable. And the worst part about it is, this is directed by Forest Whitaker, and Forest Whitaker as a director has been downright terrible. The best movie he made was Waiting to Exhale. This is the movie that came before this. And then he does this, he does First Daughter, and like, you can tell why he hasn't gone back to directing as much, because you really want him to do it. He really deserves to direct something better than movies like this. And I hate these type of movies. I hate the movie where, like, oh, Sandra Bullock is coming to our town. Let's make fun of her because her life was completely ruined on national television because it's daytime TV, and that's just what everybody does whenever they see somebody in the town here. It's just like there's nobody likable in this movie. I mean, Sandra Bullock is not likable here because she put herself in this situation by agreeing to go on the show. Instead of because I think, yeah, on these talk shows you have to have an express written consent to actually be on the shows. As far as I know of how this thing works. I don't know if that's specifically for like prank shows, or I think that's for daytime talk shows, but I think you have to have a contract signed in order for this to be okay to go on television. But but yeah, nobody in this movie is likable at all. I never got into any of these relationships because they're just not interesting. They're not great, anything spectacular. They're not in any way, shape, or form fun to watch. And like, even for a chick flick, this is one of the laziest chick flicks I have ever seen. It is not interesting. It is not clever. It is not smart. It's a melodramatic, bland piece of garbage that just, like, Sandra Bullock deserves a lot better than this. She deserves more. She deserves much better movies than this, and it's a huge blemish on her acting career because she has proven that she can be a really good actress in many other movies. This one definitely, even the best that she can to save this movie, it just can't do the trick. It's just a film that's just a mess on so many levels. It's a disaster. It's not good. It's not a great film. So let's try to buck the trend a little bit here. Let's go ahead and try to go to the next movie and see if we can find something in I Got the Hookup. Okay, maybe not really with this film, but at least they put more effort into it than Hope Floats. I can say that much. Basically, you have these two guys. Master P plays one of them. A.J. Johnson's the other one. They're called Black and Blue. They deal in TV sets and boom boxes, but then a driver mistakenly drops over a cell phone shipment, and business is on the upswing. But then the local crime boss named Roscoe, and this enforcer played by Tiny Lister, they have a deal go sour and blame Black and Blue. So Lorraine's boss, the woman in this, played by Gretchen Palmer, Dalton, played by France Turner, and the FBI are closing in. And there's just a lot going on in this movie that just really doesn't really work that well. The writing isn't as sharp as it should be. Occasionally you'll get a decent laugh here and there, but overall the movie really is not worth it. It feels like they're cramming way too much in here to really make for an interesting film. You got to keep it simple and sweet with a film like this. Like Clerks, some people compare this to Clerks, but Clerks was smart enough to have a lot of stuff going on here, but it takes place in a simple area. Like, it takes place in a single area for the majority of the movie, and that is the quick stop. Like, if you want, or something like Friday, which is a great movie that's kind of similar to Clerks, where it's mostly taking place in one general area, this neighborhood, and you have all these misadventures that go on. And I think that's really where the film kind of misses the mark there, because you have too much going on here. There's not a whole lot here to really make it unique or interesting, and it just didn't work. At least for me, it didn't work. It's a film that's just kind of like, it's trying to do something interesting and fun, but in the end, it's just not there when it's all said and done. It's a film that's just mostly forgettable. It's not that engaging. It's not that exciting. There are a couple decent laughs here and there, but they're very few and far between. So, in my personal opinion, it didn't work, but it did well enough to get a sequel, because they did a sequel 21 years later, so they must have done something right. So, but yeah, that's I Got the Hookup for you. So let's go ahead and move on to the next film. Matthew Perry and Chris Farley in his last film, Almost Heroes. Okay, I probably should be more specific. This is actually Chris Farley's last leading film role. He would later appear in a cameo in, well, not even a cameo, a supporting role in Dirty Work, which comes out a couple weeks after this, which I think is the far superior movie, but we'll get to that one in a little bit. We'll eventually talk about this film in general first. But I should say that as a kid growing up in 1997, in December of 1997, when I was about to turn 9 years old in a couple of weeks, and I heard the news that, Chris Farley had died just a few days before Christmas of that year, that was the first real celebrity death that really got to me, because I had seen Tommy Boy and Black Sheep on TV so many times. I'd seen his work on Saturday Night Live so many times. I was a big fan of his work for the longest period of time, and it really got to me. Like, that was the first real major death that I ever felt as a kid, and it was this guy who I never met before. I would have loved to meet him, honestly, if I ever could. And this was it's a shame, because he was still very much working in the business. I mean, he was still putting out movies. He was still being seen on TV. I think he had just been on Saturday Night Live 2 months before his death in October. I think it was October. It could have been earlier than that. Don't quote me on that. But But yeah, when Chris Farley died, I really was hurt by that. I really was genuinely affected by it, and it was the first real major death in my life that I ever had to deal with. And it was this guy who made me laugh a lot for a number of years, and so and yet this was a film that took me a very long time for me to actually see, and I finally watched it, and I gotta say, man, this movie really was a major, major misfire on a number of levels, and it's not because of Chris Farley. Chris Farley is doing his best. He has a couple of moments where he is very funny in here, but you see in the trailer there that I just showed you, the jokes are not that smart or not that clever. This is a movie that kind of suffers from a similar fate to something like Wagons East, which is a film that's very similar to this. That was the last film. Wagons East was the last film that John Candy did before he died. He actually died while making that movie, and that film didn't work because the comedy wasn't smartly written there, and it was not a good film whatsoever. And this film, it just doesn't work. And Chris Farley is trying his best to keep the movie afloat. And sometimes he'll get a good chuckle here and there, but other than that, though, the movie itself is just, the writing is not that smart, and it would be fine if they didn't have Christopher Guest directing this movie. Now, if you don't know who Christopher Guest is, this is the guy that did stuff like Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, For Your Consideration. I mean, this is a guy that works for stuff like SCTV. Like, he did stuff for SCTV back in the day. He's an incredibly smart, funny comedic filmmaker, part of a group of very talented comedians that came out of that thing. And it just felt like they were trying to make this way too mainstream for its own good. And like, it suffered mightily because of it. It's a film that has so much potential with the cast that they have here, with these two incredibly talented comedic actors in Chris Farley and Matthew Perry. I mean, you also have people like Eugene Levy and Kevin Dunn and Bokeem Woodbine. You also have Hamilton Camp. I want to say I almost said he was Hampton from Tiny Toons, but I don't think that was the case. But he's been a prolific actor before in the past. But you have Harry Shearer as the narrator in here. Parker Posey had a cameo in this movie that was uncredited, or at least was cut from the movie. But the writing just isn't that smart, and I think because they went too mainstream with it, Christopher Guest was not allowed to do the same type of comedy that made something like a Waiting for Guffman or a Best in Show work as well as this movie should have been. And it suffers mightily because of it, and it's just one of those movies that, this is the last major leading role for Chris Farley that we were ever going to see from him, and the writing just isn't there. This comedy just isn't there for him. And to think that he was almost the voice of Shrek, and if you see that archival footage that's out there of what a Shrek was going to be, I feel like that Shrek movie could have been something much more interesting to see what Chris Farley would have done with that. Not to say that Mike Myers is bad as Shrek. I mean, Shrek is a great movie, and Mike Myers fits that role well. But seeing what he could have done with Eddie Murphy's donkey in that clip there, it would have been a very interesting thing to see what would have happened if he had actually completed that film. But of course, that never happened. But yeah, in this movie, he's just not. It's not his fault. It's the writing's fault. It's a movie that I feel like is going too mainstream. It's trying to appeal to a much broader audience than these people that somebody like Christopher Guest should be involved in. And it's just not funny. I tried to get some good laughs out of this, and I got one or two chuckles here or there, but never anything that made me laugh out loud, like something like Tommy Boy does, or Black Sheep, or some of these early movies that Farley did. And in this case, I just feel like it's a major missed opportunity. It's a film that should have been a lot more enjoyable, a lot more clever, but it just wasn't there, and it just ends up being a very lackluster film that should have been so much more. And it's a shame that this is the last thing that Chris Farley's starring, in terms of a starring role, has his name attached to it, and you expect a whole lot more from him, honestly. So that's Almost Heroes. Let's once again try to buck this trend a little bit. Let's get to some good movies, and we have a couple of good movies to wrap this week up, including this next film that we have here, and that is Whit Stillman's The Last Days of Disco. So, The Last Days of Disco takes place in the very early 1980s, and you're basically following these people who are... this is loosely based on Whit Stillman's travels and experiences in various nightclubs in Manhattan, including stuff like Studio 54, and it follows a group of Ivy League and Hampshire College graduates falling in and out of love in the disco scene of New York City in the early 1980s, and literally the last days of disco, because we were moving into a new decade and a new type of music was taking over. And this is the third film in Stillman's what he calls his Doom, Bouges, and Love series. Metropolitan and Barcelona also come into play here. These three films are very independent of each other, except for some cameos from characters. And the idea for disco was originally conceived after Barcelona's disco scenes. And even if you've never seen those movies, there's still a lot to admire about this film. I think this is an incredibly well-made film that has just so many good, talented people involved in this. I mean, Chloe Sevigny, Kate Beckinsale, Jennifer Beals, Michael Weatherly, Chris Eigman, Matt Kessler, Mackenzie Austin. Just a really good cast overall in this film that just is working off each other very well. And it is a fun movie. It's a very engaging film, and you do get involved with the dialogue, with the dialogue of these characters. And they're just a lot of really good people, cool people to be around. Like you want to get along with these characters. You want to see what adventures they'll go on while they're dealing with the situations that they're in. And it's just a really damn good movie. It's a film that has a great soundtrack, classic songs from the 70s, all throughout the film. The visual look of the film is impressive. It's just an amazing, amazing film. It's a film that I was not really expecting a whole lot from, but once I went into it, and came out of it, I was just kind of like, wow, this movie's a lot smarter and a lot more clever than I thought it was going to be. I think it is a very good, solidly made film, and it's easily the best of the Studio 54 films that were coming out in this year, because we also had the 54 movie, which had Nev Campbell and Mike Myers in that one, which came out the same year and did not do very well, for obvious reasons, because the movie ended up not being all that great and felt like a film that was, it just didn't work as well as I think they wanted it to. This is definitely the stronger film relating to Studio 54. This is definitely the better film. And even if you've never seen Whit Stillman's other work here, like I said, you really do get invested by it, and you get so attached to these characters, and you want to see where they're going to go from here. And I think they do a fantastic job in this film. It's a great movie. I really definitely recommend checking this movie out. Last Days of Disco. Check it out. You will not be disappointed by it. So with that said, on to the last movie we have here, and that is Insomnia. So this is the film that eventually inspired the 2002 Christopher Nolan movie Insomnia with Robin Williams and Al Pacino. And you basically have a story of a police detective investigating a murder in a town located above the Arctic Circle. The investigation goes horribly wrong when he mistakenly shoots his partner and subsequently attempts to cover it up. And the title of the film refers to his inability to sleep, the result of his guilt, represented by the relentless glare of the midnight sun. And you have Stellan Skarsgård playing the police officer in this movie, and the other guy is Sverre Usdo. And if you've seen Insomnia, you pretty much have seen this film. It's very much in that same line here, and this is a movie that just fits right into these type of movies that I love. These movies that takes place in the snow, this mystery aspect that takes place in the snow. Like The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo comes to mind. It's just something about snow, man. Like the snow, the winter feel just fits movies like this so well, and I just get so attached to them because of that fact. I think they do a very good job of handling that, and it's just a beautiful looking film to look at just on that level alone. And the remake is definitely better. The Christopher Nolan film is definitely the better film, but they did a fantastic job with this movie. It's just a great movie, man. It's a great mystery. It's a great modern day noir film, and you just get so attached to the film visually because of the way the movie looks when you walk around these winter settings, and it's just such an amazing feel to the movie overall. And I really enjoyed this movie a lot. Like, even though I like the 2002 movie better, this is definitely a very good film to watch if you love mystery neo-noir thrillers that take place in the wintertime. This original Insomnia definitely does the trick for you. It's a very good film. Definitely check it out. So on that note, we wrap up another edition of Time About the Movies. The next time we meet, we'll talk about 4 movies, including Jim Carrey in The Truman Show. We also have Michael Douglas and Gwyneth Paltrow in A Perfect Murder, Mr. Jealousy, and Beyond Silence. So 4 movies to look at next time around. We will delve into those next time. But until then, Thank you very much for watching, and if you want to see more videos like this, please hit the playlist on the next page. Check out the previous episode. Also, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see more videos like this. And I will see you guys next time for the next video. So thanks for watching. I'll see you next time, and until then, as always, I tried to do the thing, and I had the wrong hand for it. But anyway, like I said, I'll see you next time, and until then, take care.